Welcome to our Wednesday interview show at Living Free in Tennessee. We had somebody who had an interview with me had something come up at the last minute. I had already promoted for the week, and I didn't want to give anybody who's taken the time to fill out my guest form short shrift on the promotion. So I threw out like, who wants to come on the show? And these four put their hats in the ring. And I thought, well, let's do a roundtable discussion. So I'm kind of calling it what am I calling it? Meet the Fleet. That's what I said because it rhymed. Meet the Fleet. These are all folks who are from the Living Free in Tennessee network. I think you all listen to my podcast, or else you probably wouldn't know who I was. So we're going to start by going once around the horn. But before we do that, I'm going to ask those of you in the live stream, if you've got questions, put the first word in all caps, so I know you want me to ask it to them. And we are streaming on multiple YouTube channels today, not just the Living Free in Tennessee one. I think, Jake, you're streaming to yours. It looks like we're streaming to Carrie's. I don't know if Ryan has one. I don't think so.
I do.
Are we right? Are we streaming to it or no?
No, I don't know how to do that.
No pressure. Yeah. Anyway, so we've got a couple different ones. So if you're like, she's not seeing my question, I don't know if the comments filter in from everybody's YouTube channels for me. We'll find out as we go. But y'all who have it on your YouTube, if you notice somebody's asking a question and I'm not noticing, just let me know. And that would be awesome. So let's start by going once around the horn. And we're going to just start out with who or what are you? Like, what are you? How'd you end up on my show? And what brought you into the sorts of things you're doing today in your life? And I'm going to start with you, Letty, because you're in the upper left-hand corner. So you get to go first.
Great. No pressure. I am Letty, affectionately known as Letty Lou throughout the TSP, LFTN, Two-Man Tim, all the different circles. I found Nicole through listening to TSP and then joined her MeWe group. And back in 2020, she did these like Kickstarter small groups during COVID shutdowns saying, hey, what's your small business? What's your idea? And made me realize I could be a virtual assistant in addition to being a parliamentarian. And I started stuff, but never went anywhere with it. And then about a year and a half ago, she says, hey, you're good with spreadsheets. Can you help me out with SRF stuff? And I said, okay. And that has just branched out to doing more stuff with SRF and helping her out with some LFTN things. And now I'm here. I don't know why. Don't know why I decided to do this, but I'm here. So good luck.
All right, Jake, you're next.
Sure. So I'm Jake. I'm a person. I'm a human, I think. Found Nicole and LFTN, I think through Jack. Found him years and years ago back in the first wave of prepping stuff. I'm primarily a software developer, but I've always had an interest in homesteading, survival, that kind of thing. Working on some new initiatives in 2024, like Arsenal of Freedom, which is going to be a podcast about more freedom than liberty, since the community kind of already has the liberty thing handled, right? Everybody's free and has liberty everywhere, right?
Everywhere. It's
everywhere.
We got that one. Check. All right, Ryan. Who or what is Ryan Spiva?
I got connected with you, Nicole, I think somewhere around 2018. I started listening to your podcast before that, but I reached out to you because you had some plants after a LFTN workshop, I think, and we lived pretty close. So I came by to get those and got to meet you and realized you were a real person. So I got a little more involved in the community and started doing GSD days and things when you guys had those. So that's how I got connected. And one of the things that happened is during that journey, right around that time, I actually had a job loss from a company that I was working with that went under, and I needed a new position. And instead of going and getting another job, because of the encouragement that I got from your podcast and from people like Jack Spirko and others, I decided to actually branch out and do my own thing. So I'm really passionate about helping people. And the first business that I started that I'm still doing is home inspection. And then just recently, a little over a year ago, I also started doing homestead consulting, so helping people set up their homesteads. And it's been a really fun ride. It's been really neat being able to own my own businesses and really help people out in every way I possibly can. So that's kind of how I got connected and what I do.
Carrie.
I am Kerry Brown. I found TSP early on when Jack was still yelling at people while driving the Jetta, and found your show through that, and then got to meet you in person for the first time in 2019 at the Rogue Food Conference. At which point, I kind of started connecting with the LFTN community. Came out to the 2020 workshop for the first time. Angel and I helped out there and had a wonderful time. And I realized I'd found my people. And right around that time, I'd also started Strong Roots Resources as a edible landscape design business, which has kind of grown many other tentacles, foraging and land study and all sorts of cool stuff like that. And Nicole and the adjoining community has been a huge support and base for me to get this rolling.
Speaking of the Rogue Food Conference, Carrie reminds me of a story about how I can be a little batty sometimes when concentrating on something, nothing else exists. And so this was the, third or fourth Rogue Food Conference, and it was in Tennessee. And I had gotten up, packed my stuff, gone out there because I was speaking. And the day before we were doing a workshop, and I packed my black shoes, my black business shoes. And I got there and I had one black shoe of two different shoes. And he said, "Hey, I'm driving by your house on the morning of Rogue Food Conference. I'm driving by your house. Could I pick anything up for you?" And I was like, "Yeah, my other shoe." So,
yep.
And
I got a text that just said shoe.
So, shoe. I need a shoe. So, thanks to Carrie, when I was speaking in front of everybody at Rogue Food Conference, I wasn't lopsided in two different shoes. But the funny thing is, I'd worn them the whole day before that way, and nobody noticed. So just as a testament to people's observation skills. Yeah. So yes, I'm human, as you've all discovered when you've met me in person, and stuff like that happens to me all the time. Okay. So every one of you has either started a side hustle or is out on your own. How do you decide that you're going to keep going with it every day on the days when it's hard?
I'll take that one. This was advice from Toolman Tim. He said, never quit on a bad day. And that was good advice, because I've had a few of those here and there the last 4 years. And he relayed that early on. So never give up just because you're kind of looking at a complex situation or a situation that seems unsolvable. Just step back, chill. It's probably not as big of an emergency as you may think. So that's worth keeping in mind.
All right. Anybody else want to pipe in? Just go for it.
Yeah, for me, one of the things that I've done is I've kept my overhead as low as I can. So, and by doing a few different things, I can transition from one thing to another. In a lot of cases, I'll have something that's kind of lined up, but I don't have to commit to an exact date, and that way I can fill in spaces. So that has been so much more fulfilling than going to a job every day, and I remind myself of that. But I'm also able to fill in some of those gaps where I might otherwise have slow times. And that's really helped reduce the feeling of I need to give up or I need to go do something else.
Yep.
Yeah, I think another good one is be your own advocate / argue against yourself when your brain is coming in with all the excuses of why I should quit, why this sucks, blah, 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 blah. Argue with that. Like, argue with yourself, essentially.
I mean, if I don't get my stuff done, the person I'm working for doesn't get stuff done. And I like to make the people I work for look good. It's what I did as a paralegal. It's what I do now. And it also, I mean, it's my breakaway from my kids because I'm a stay-at-home mom. So when I take my 15 minutes to pull together a couple promos or get whatever done, work on an email, that's my me time, which sounds kind of counterintuitive to some people. But for me, I'm not stressed out when I'm working on stuff. So it works for me.
Awesome. Okay. So Jake said he wanted to talk about freedom versus liberty. Jake, what do you see as the difference between those two things?
So I was thinking about that as a concept, and a lot of this, the community in general, focuses a lot on liberty and liberty. Liberty is great. I was in the liberty movement, in 2012, tried to help Ron Paul get elected. If you said you were a parliamentarian, so like, wish you would have been here during that, because that was an absolute shit show. But that's something that, yes, you can affect ish, you can influence, you can project, you can lobby, do whatever. But liberty is a state of the government or the society not putting restrictions on you. Freedom is your ability to act independent of restrictions or independent of those obstacles and your ability to get through those obstacles. So that's a personal thing that you can control, and you can work towards building more freedom in your life. Like, if you aren't tied to a job and you have that business, you can maybe take off for 3 weeks and go to, drive across country to SRF and TSP and all those different things, where if you had specifically your job that wouldn't let you just take off for 3 weeks, you couldn't do that.
Anybody else have thoughts on that?
That's a huge part of what helps keep me going, is always knowing that I have more flexibility. Yeah, I work harder, I work longer hours, but I have more flexibility in how I do things and when I do things. And I can pursue the things that actually make a difference in the world. So yeah, I agree. I think there's a big difference, and that's a personal, that it comes down to being able to choose that personally, rather than trying to make sure that somebody allows you to do it.
Funny, because my 5-year-old actually asked me today, Mama, what is freedom? Because we found the Tuttle Twins cartoon, so he's been watching those. And I was kind of like, well, I had to think, how do I explain freedom to a 5-year-old? And I said, freedom for you is the fact that you're homeschooled. So we just do our school here when you're ready, what you want to learn, and at the level that works best for you. If there's something that he can go in more detail in, we're going to do that. I said, you have freedom by that. I said, it also means that we get to go to the library. We can take trips down to Illinois to visit the family. We can do all this other stuff. I said, Mama's version of freedom is that I'm not working 12 hours a day in downtown Chicago, that I can stay with you guys, and that I can also pick up odd jobs here and there doing document review or whatever else for other people. And that's how I get my bit of freedom. So it's fun to try to figure out what is it for me, but then how do I explain that to a child too? Because not everybody's answer for what freedom is going to be the same either.
When I was doing market research on words in an effort to further freedom around the US, I realized that nobody has a very good definition of freedom. Like, you can go to the dictionary and look one up, right? But everybody's interpretation of what that means is different, which makes it a really difficult word to use in marketing, except for some people respond really well to the word freedom. So it's like you had this double-edged sword, but then they may think you're one thing that you're not. So we always struggled with, like, how do we relate what we're talking about without using the word liberty or freedom or agorism. That also is not helpful. Like, all of these intangible, esoteric words are interesting. So just to be on the nerd side of things for a second, Carrie, any thoughts on that, or are you picking?
Yeah, I've kind of picked up the voluntarist term. It seems to be a little less inflammatory. I operate in so many different types of social and economic circles. Anything from your kind of, your average conservative to your kind of classical liberal, and I see all sides of it, and it does seem like pretty much everybody is going for the same goal. Some people just seem to tolerate more input from other entities than some do. So I started kind of describing voluntarism, even though it's kind of an awkward word. And when I start talking to people about, I just like to be able to choose who I want to exchange with and how we do it without a whole bunch of other entities getting too involved in that. And most people are like, oh yeah, it sounds great. So it's perspective is a funny thing, I guess.
I do think it is a funny thing. Jake looked like he was about to say something, but
yeah, just trying to time it. There's a voluntarism, there's agorism, there's consensualism, which people think is a very different thing than it is sometimes if you don't explain it. But the difference between that and just the word freedom, you don't get a lot of objections to freedom. You might even get some objections to liberty because of libertarians and things that different groups have. But in America, at least, you don't get an objection to freedom. You might get some initial pushback. Well, I don't want to be free to do whatever, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, that's not what I'm talking about. It's your freedom to be able to act independently of outside forces.
like property taxes. We were going off on property taxes yesterday as just the way to kick old people out of their homes over time as their homes increase in value, which is a bummer.
Yeah, it's essentially the last remnants of feudalism.
Yeah.
That's true.
So I don't know, how would we get rid of property taxes? Because then Tag was like, we've got to get rid of property taxes. And I'm like, I love that goal. How do we get it done? Like, what do we got to do? Because you've got so many layers. So my thought is you start at one layer. And probably the layer where you're most likely to be successful is the local layer. But then you need to figure out what they're replacing that with, because they're still going to want revenue. Like if you're actually going to go back into politics and fight. This is part of why I stepped out of politics, is because I don't like the compromise of any taxes.
So two ways. You either have some sort of a county level, because it's usually at the county level, at least in Arizona. City usually gets their taxes from sales tax, which they call a transaction privilege tax, which just irks the hell out of me. Like, it's a privilege to do, but I thought that was part of the pursuit of happiness. But either a value added tax or a land value tax, which would be similar to a property tax, except for that it would be a tax on unimproved land instead of, hey, you added a new roof to your house. I see that we can tax you another $285 a year or whatever. And it would be scaled across the board if you wanted to have a compromise with that.
Here's something I wonder. Is there anywhere in the United States where you can buy property and there is not a local property tax?
Nevada, if that's still correct. There's some areas where you
okay.
can get what's called an alloidial title.
I mean, separate from all that mess. I mean, like, you move to this town and they've figured out how to do revenue without property taxes. Anybody know?
Quick Google search says no.
So I wonder, from a free market standpoint, let's say DeKalb County, Tennessee, where I live, because that's where I want it to happen first, of course, decides to get rid of all local property taxes. What does that do competition-wise? Does that then cause people to move in? And if they figured out how to fund in a different way, that actually might bring prosperity to the area. It also might serve to make a layer of government that's onerous as hell. But
it would be interesting to see what the response would be, because I think you get very different types of people who would find that intriguing, that they may pursue that. Because you might have, say, the people who don't have kids and don't want to be paying for schools moving into the area. Or you might have somebody who wants to live off the land and not have to be bringing in an income. And there might be various different people. So I think you get these really interesting microcosms of different types of people moving into that space.
Well, I know I'm not the only one who's been capable of having that thought, which means somebody's already had that thought and decided not to try to push that somewhere. And there's a reason for that. So now you guys have given me a to-do list thing. So thanks for that.
The county structures are really interesting in that they have really old power structures. Like, nobody messes with and tries to change things at the county level. They'll try to change things at city hall. They'll try to change things at state government, at least in Arizona. I don't know about everywhere else, but Also, it's interesting that they call it a county, because a county would have an account or a jarl or something like that, a baron. It's a medieval power structure essentially that got grafted into America from England.
Yeah, I don't think we knew how to make a government differently than that way. Like there is definitely stems into gentry at the founding of our country, even though they were trying to walk away from gentry. And if you look at George Washington's choices as president, he put some amount of sort of pomp and circumstance in, but he actively tried to make it so that the president didn't become king-like. So there was like that effort to walk away from it at the same time trying to have dignity in the higher leadership positions. So
Washington wanted us to have nothing to do with political parties or foreign entanglements. His first executive order, I believe, was from China ware for the White House, just because it was like a purchase order, not a demand. But he also led the whiskey rebellion, or the whiskey tax. So I believe it was Adams actually that wanted a very pompous Your Excellency style title for the president.
now it's just Mr. President.
Go ahead, Carrie.
Thanks. I read this book a few years back by John Michael Greer, and it's called Retrotopia. And he explores, it's a fiction book, it's a novel, and he explores a future America that has kind of, that no longer has centralized government. And so it's split off into multiple republics, and the bulk of the story takes place in what they call the Lakeland Republic, which is like Ohio, Michigan, that whole area. And each kind of a county or a designated area within each, it was like a direct actual representative republic, and the people of each of those districts essentially could decide how much infrastructure they wanted. So the more infrastructure they wanted, the more taxes they were willing to pay. Otherwise, things were all like private. So if you could have nice roads and low taxes, but a bunch of people would basically get together to make the roads and answer the roads question, or schools or libraries. And if you didn't like living in a place that was a little more behind the times or whatever, you could go elsewhere, pay more taxes, and have more of those amenities. And it's that, of course, that's a very rough layout of it, but yeah, it's called Retrotopia, and it's a really good book. It's a little bit overlooked, but it's for people who are really into like what other structures could look like. I highly recommend it.
And I think that makes a really interesting point as well, Carrie, in that one of the real struggles in trying to remove things like property tax locally is that there is a burden from the higher up governmental structure to provide certain services that are required by the more local jurisdictions. And so having those higher mechanisms in place means that now the local county government is going to have to create the revenue to deal with those requirements. So I think we're actually the place to start is local, but it's a challenge because there's larger requirements or edicts being handed down.
The edicts, the hounding down of the edicts. And yet there is so much control on the local level. Okay, let's transition back to building the life you choose, which is kind of where you guys started and explained how you got your side hustle going, or what your full-time hustle. When you first started your whatever your project is now or business, how much did you think you would need community, and how much, like, were you right or wrong about that?
I really thought I could just update my LinkedIn and say, hey, this is what I'm doing, and get people that I used to work with who had left their company and were doing their own things to work with them. And it took me a year to realize that those were not the people that I really wanted to be working with and working for. I went to LFTN 2 years ago, and I realized these are the people. You cannot have scissors. It's like, these are the people that I want to help, that I can assist. So community's definitely been big for me, because that's where I've gotten all of my work.
How about you, Carrie?
Yeah, it's been key. So when I started just kind of doing some property maintenance and mowing and things just to make the money, to create a fund, to do other stuff, I had such a good results from my incredibly like hyper local neighborhood community. And my name got out there so fast, it was a little bit overwhelming. It was suddenly like, if you needed anything done in your yard, call Carrie. And Carrie suddenly had more work than he knew what to do with. But then when I got into, branching out and really getting into the permaculture stuff and the design and the consulting, where my heart really is, early on, before I had really, like, before I'd gone to your workshop and all that stuff, I just kind of felt like I was just, casting out into who knows what on social media. I didn't really have a base to check in with. And so everything has come off of all of these different communities now. So the ones through LFTN, the ones here through our local regenerative groups, all the different branches off of that tree, really. So, I mean, I've been taught so much about how to get the word out, how to speak publicly, how to get in front of people, how to convey what kind of services I have to offer. All of that's come because I've made friends with people who could teach me this.
How about you, Jig?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can talk about one of my previous things, which some of you may have known from when I was doing it with the Survivalist box, which my biggest mistake was, I'll just put it out there and people will show up and buy it. And, I was kind of saved a couple of times because I was using a platform called Cratejoy, and like around Christmas, they'll really spam their network and get you a lot of gift subscriptions, but those only last for like 3 months and then your revenue goes away. So it's like, instead of building a community, building a list, building a funnel, I was just like, okay, I'm just going to dump a bunch of money into inventory and just go. And like, if I had taken 10 steps back and done that might have been more successful. I was also doing a full-time job at the time, and that's not the kind of business you can do as a side hustle. But stuff that I can do as a side hustle is like fixing people's WordPress websites, their marketing, and their whatever funnel. Even local businesses around here are terrible at that. They don't do social. They don't do. Most of the bars and restaurants don't even have a website anymore. And the last post they posted was, "We need a server" or something like that. They don't bring in. I mean, Phoenix is a huge community for travelers that come in, and they're looking on Google for something to do, and they
The
can't
best
find
Mexican food in Phoenix. Come on,
something
that's
like
what
that.
we're looking for.
Whatever they're looking for, but like nobody seems to get community right now, and I think that's going to be the thing that keeps us going when the madhouse happens towards the end of the year. If we all know what that means.
How about you, Ryan?
Well, I think for me, community has been it's huge. It's very important. I think when I started home inspecting and started my own business instead of working for somebody else, that was right at the beginning of the pandemic, and I was involved in some freedom-oriented groups. So I found people that I could work with who were still doing transactions and not cowered at home. So that was really, really helpful. And then since then, being somebody who, I do designs and all kinds of things for people setting up their homesteads. But one of the biggest things that I've found I can do to help people is tell them who to connect with. It's like, if you're in this area and you need an herbalist, here's one or two people that I know who are herbalists and who I trust and who do a really good job. Or whatever the need is, I can get them connected with somebody. And that's been invaluable to be able to give that information and to know the people who do those things. It's knowing those people and knowing I can trust them to hand off to my clients or just friends and family or whatever. That side of community is invaluable.
Yeah, I know that moving to Tennessee till today, the biggest challenges I've ever had and the hardest things I've ever had to do have been because I didn't know a guy, basically. And as our network has blossomed, I more often know somebody who knows somebody. And having like seeing that come to maturity from like moving to Tennessee and not knowing a soul here to now has been very eye-opening for me. And it like makes me rethink, like, if you're going to move to a new area, start getting out right away and talking to people and getting to know people, because and not with the intention of to take something from them, right? With the intention to be helpful, because as you know more and more people, you have somebody who's able to show up and respond to the squirrel thing Friday before Self-Reliance Festival, who is on this call right now. So which had that happened to me 10 years before, I don't even know what I would have done, because Ryan was able to get there the same day because of his flexible schedule, and it just happened to work out that week. And the soonest I could get a wildlife specialist or an exterminator there was Monday, because people are, anybody who's good at their trade is booked forever, just solidly, right? But
Yep.
he was able to move some stuff around and go.
Yeah, I'm finding that I'm having to rebuild my local community because a lot of the people I knew or friends or colleagues have either moved out of this area or are just inactive in the sense of they're doing their own thing far enough away that it doesn't matter. So it's like, okay. It's kind of a weird thing to be in a city of 5 million and be so isolated on top of it.
I think it's easier to be isolated in the city.
Yeah.
And I feel like, so when I moved to the Holler Homestead, I thought I would never see another soul again. And anybody who's been here knows why. I just figured I'd be alone. And the first day we were here, the next door neighbor drove up the driveway, like, "Hey, neighbor, blah, 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 blah." And I realized that more people talk to each other here than like in the city. The only reason I knew the person next door to me is my tree fell on their house. So I had to talk to them and they had to talk to me back. But other than that, the other people around me were car to door to car, car to door to car. That was it. And without actively reaching out locally in the city, that would just continue.
Yeah.
And it does depend a bit on your neighborhood. Like some neighborhoods are more reach outy than others, but a lot of times people like in apartment complexes who live next door to each other haven't actually met to each other, and they share a wall.
Yeah, I would say the majority of people I've consulted with over the last couple of years have been transplants, and which is cool. Bring all the good that you would like to Tennessee. I'm all right with that. But I do find that one of the first things I start talking to them about is, have you met your neighbors yet? Even if they're a couple miles away. I just kind of gently encourage people that down here, it is still cool to bake some cookies and knock on the doors next door and say, "Hey, this is us. This is, here's some cookies. Let us know if we can help you with anything." Like, just don't. That's how we build trust in the South. And I can only speak to the South because it's the only place I've ever lived. But we like to know the people around us and establish that trust. And like you said, without the idea of, what can I take from this person, but what can we contribute? And it's interesting how some folks, when I suggest that to them, they are a little bit weirded out by it. And I'm like, trust me, I don't know if they've been told that they're going to get shot the instant they walk up onto somebody's porch. Like, that's
That's probably what they've been taught.
Yeah. And so I'm trying to help dispel those myths because after a little while, most people are like, oh, hey, people down here are really friendly. Like they pull you out of the ditch, they bring you food, they check on you when the weather's been terrible. I mean, that's something I've noticed locally is all over Facebook and next door. People are saying, hey, these roads are terrible. Don't try it. I've got the plow on the truck. Let me know if you need help. I mean, that's just how it is. So I just encourage people to not isolate themselves.
Yeah, that being said, if there's a closed gate that says no trespassing, you don't open the gate to bring the cookies.
Yeah.
Like I would,
Common sense. Yeah.
I would find, well, it sounds like, yes, it sounds like common sense. And yet, people respect that, because if there's a closed gate and you come through that gate, people they're going to be looking at you funny. Like, why did you just come up my driveway?
I think the other thing is that there's a lot of the people who live, at least in Tennessee and in a lot of the South, they have deep family roots. And so if you get to know a little bit about the story or the history of the area, you can make a pretty much instant connection with a lot of the neighbors and really dispel a lot of the standoffishness. So like my house is a 200+ year old log cabin. And so I had people stopping by periodically going, I grew up in that house, and it was a little bit awkward for me at first because I came from the North and nobody would do that there. But talking to those people and getting a bit of the history of the land was really helpful in being able to actually say connect with neighbors or talk to other people in the area, because I started to understand what the history of the area was. And it was an inroad to connect with those people. And they felt like I actually cared about the land, the area, the culture, and everything else.
It's not just the South where you get the families and the history for the towns. I mean, I live up in northern Wisconsin, and it's the same thing up here. Most of the people that I've met over the past year going to story time and stuff, they've lived here their entire lives. Their families are from here for generations. So I'm the interloper coming up here from Chicago, but over the past, we've been up here for 2.5 years in our house, and it's only over the past year that we finally felt comfortable to go out and start meeting people, because in the city, you don't talk to your neighbors. You don't. You just, even living in the suburbs, from 10 years ago, it's even more closed off now than it was. So coming to a small town of just about 1,000 people or so, yeah, it's been tough, but I mean, we're finally making inroads. And I was supposed to go to a fun group meetup last night, but I couldn't because my car wouldn't start because it was too dang cold. So here's hoping.
Too dang cold is the theme this week. It's too dang cold.
So here's hoping that next month I can get out there and meet some more people. But I mean, I helped plan a freedom event and I got to speak at it last year just because they were like, hey, we need people who can help plan events. It's like, I can do this. But that was my little inroad. So it's everywhere. You just got to find the right person, and that person will then be your connector to everybody and everything else.
Hey, that's actually, for me, I find farmers markets and selling my stuff at farmers markets to be kind of a waste of time based on the revenue that comes in from that. But the relationships you get, on the other hand, at the local farmers market, if you're not going to like the big city one, are invaluable. And I spent several seasons selling there and got to know local farmers, and then through them, other people in the community. And I'm like the quirky person from Oregon here. I will always be the quirky person from Oregon here. I'm never going to be from here. But I'm like their cute little mascot now, as opposed to somebody who they're like, why is she asking for organic chicken food? Like, that's weird. Is she a purple person? We're not sure we like purple people. When I'm just looking for soy-free stuff, it's the thing that we do. So, okay, back to business. And this happens in every startup I know, where you get going and you have revenue high times and then you have revenue low times. How do you guys handle that sort of, it's a good month, it's a bad month thing from a financial planning standpoint for your business?
Facebook Marketplace. Sell stuff. I've been cleaning out the shop anyhow, because at this point I've had, I've accumulated some tools that just turn out to not really be anything that I use. So, yeah, it's kind of funny. My brother and I will joke about this because he's a hardscaper, so he has his slow season, and that's we start talking about what can I sell, or he'll get tools on auction really cheap and turn them around, and so I'm kind of doing the slightly simpler version of that. But yeah, like you were talking about on the show the other day about cleaning out your garbage. Sometimes, I mean, just throw stuff up there. If it's small things that are easy to ship, put it on eBay. You get more eyeballs on it. Adjust for the fees and everything they take out, and you can generate some grocery money. Last February, when the budget was thin, as it happens, I earned grocery money on elderberry cuttings, of all things. I just bundled up a bunch, set a base price, listed them on Marketplace, meeting spot, just made it real clear in the description, like this is not a negotiation. You want this, I will be here at this time. It will cost you this much. And what was great is I had all these people a couple months later sending me pictures of their rooted elderberry that were happily doing their spring thing. So, yeah, don't be afraid to get on there and just offload stuff that's in the way, turn it into cash.
Yeah, to jump in there, if you've ever seen Gary Vaynerchuk's Trash Talk series, if you want to do the eBay side hustle reselling thing, yard sailing, garage sailing, whatever, watch like 1 or 2 episodes of that, and if it fires you up, go do it, and if it doesn't, go figure something else out, because like you're either that person or you're not. It's either in the blood or it's not. But I've been doing some eBay type stuff, putting stuff on OfferUp. Right now is a very interesting time for OfferUp because and Craigslist and stuff like that, because there's a lot of local stuff that's available right now, very cheap, because everybody's trying to new year, new me, get stuff out of the garage. And I'm like, cool, I'll score that gumball machine for $50 and then put it in my friend's coffee shop, put organic gumballs in it and put the sign up so that it's upselling that way. So there's ways to start, and also shift seasonally, right? So if some of you have things that are, this is only good in this season, well, shift into something that's less seasonal for your other side hustle, or just offer your list a bonus item for buying something instead of a sale. That's another good one.
Mm-hmm. Ryan, what do you do?
One of my strategies is just to have diversity. So I'm a lifelong learner. I always want to learn new things. And once I get enough of a mastery on that thing, people usually find out about it. So I oftentimes am helping out with, especially a lot of times, weird things that need a unique solution. So having that under my belt, where I can help people with odd things that somebody won't, having a kind of a broad array of things that I can do has helped. So I can fill in as I'm building my true business. I can fill in with some of those smaller things that's more like a side hustle. That's helped a lot to be able to kind of go and do whatever for different people that I know. And then again, having community has helped. But especially having the two businesses, they tend to, as one wanes, the other kind of takes off, and they go back and forth. And then sometimes I'll use that downtime as an opportunity to do marketing or make videos or polish something off that needs work.
Letty, your thoughts on that?
Find somebody, well, because I do virtual assistant work, I just found somebody who constantly needs work between event planning and doing other stuff. So there's that. And I mean, I have a handful of other folks who they know that they've got a presentation coming up and they need a PowerPoint done or a newspaper article reviewed, that they can just send it my way and I'll have it done for them. So it's just making sure that the word is out there. I mean, I was asked if I was going to add bookkeeping to my services, and it's something I've been going back and forth with, but as of right now, it's not happening just because I want to make sure that I can do the best work that I possibly can for my number one client. So it's also just trying to, it's also knowing what skills do you have? Like what do you bring to the community? What is needed out there? For the longest time, I didn't know what my quote unquote special sauce was for the LFTN community and whatnot until I realized people don't like spreadsheets. People don't like document editing. That is my jam. I love that type of thing, and I like being organized. So my other side hustle that I'm going to start really doing more with and promoting this year is doing like virtual organization consulting, helping people clean out their closets and garages and stuff, because I can work with you one-on-one over the course of 4 hours over a month or two. And that's not going to take away from everything else that I'm doing, but it's also going to help me and help you, because the more stuff you can get rid of, the cleaner your mind is going to be and the more stuff you can get done.
She just summarized Monday's podcast in one sentence.
Yeah, I listened to that one twice while I was cleaning. I was like, oh, damn. Now you've inspired me.
Now I got to clean my stuff up. Well, we've got a state full of people snowed in right now, so it's the perfect time to be sorting your stuff if you're not fighting the freeze. Yesterday, we were all fighting the freeze. How cold? Okay, so the two Tennesseans, what was your low last night?
I think it was -4 is what my phone registered right before the sun came up.
Right.
I think I was about the same, somewhere -2, -4, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I threw my living room thermometer sensor thing outside, which does talk to my phone, and we were at -4. The biggest, the coldest person who reported in on our Freedom Cell, I think, was -8.
Mm.
And Tennessee doesn't do that well.
No.
Yeah. Our Midwest people are like, me. That's not cold, Nicole.
It's 10 degrees right now with a real feel of 6 right here. So I'm just like, this is a heat wave. I can't wait to get out and work on like battery later this afternoon.
Meanwhile, Jake, did it get below freezing last night in Arizona?
66 degrees right now, and it's been getting down to like maybe 34 if you're lucky, but like more like lower 40s, 50s. We had like 2 weeks where it was like really cold and everybody looked like they were from Canada here, because everybody puts on their puffy jacket when it's under like 40 here.
That's still shorts and hoodie weather.
Yeah, for most of us. Like, I've got a really thin hoodie and that's all I need for around town. If I go out past the city island, then I'll put on a better jacket because it gets really cold out there. But
I mean, I knew it was cold yesterday when I actually put on socks to go outside, because I usually just go barefoot and just throw my Crocs on if I'm running out with the kids. But yesterday it's like, I do need the wool socks, and the light wool, not the super heavy wool. So there is a difference.
There is a difference. I'm with you. I actually don't like the heavy wool either in my shoes. So
I had kind of a surprise when I moved down here from Minnesota. So I used to do outside service work in Minnesota. And usually I got called out in the absolute coldest stuff. So I figured when I moved to Tennessee, basically I'll be wearing a t-shirt all the time. One of the things I found is that the cold is different because it's more humid. And so it actually like saps the energy faster than it does up north, because up north it gets so cold so fast. You lose a lot of that humidity. So there is definitely a difference, and we're not built for this kind of cold here.
The pipes in our homes are not built for this kind of cold, are they, Ryan?
No.
Yeah. I had the drip last night too, even though we've rerouted mine under the house. So that's the only reason I have water, because T does not have water. He did not drip last night.
Yeah, I forgot to.
Yeah, it'll get you. The one that gets me is the middle of the day. I still need to drip, and you like turn the faucet on and then you turn it off and you go away and forget. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I usually freeze my pipes. But okay, we're coming towards the end of the hour. Let's go once around the horn. Like, you're all somewhere new with your side hustle or your business, or you're about to start something new. Like, tell us why you've chosen to do what you're about to do or what you're doing now, and what you learned from doing other things to get there. And let's start with you, Carrie. Like, what's next, and why, and all of that.
Strong Roots is ramping up the foraging and plant ID aspect of the business, because I continue to have so much interest in it. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy teaching people. I enjoy the time that I spend alone identifying things on a property and documenting them. So I'm gonna place more focus on that, whether that's by invitation onto other properties for walks, at events and such, or the classes that I'll be holding here on the farm as well. And we may even do some at nearby parks and different things. I'm gonna try to hit like various levels of accessibility for people. That's going to be the big push, because I have wrapped up my contracts with the last of my regular property maintenance people. So Strong Roots will be teaching, consulting, design, and edible and pollinator garden installations. So it's taken me 4 years, but I am fully on board with what I really want to be doing.
And why did you go that way?
Because I don't like anybody telling me what to do, among other reasons. But yeah, my days of taking orders and reporting to bosses are over and done. So I needed to find multiple ways to serve people and earn my keep.
All right. How about you, Letty?
So my goals for this year and like going forward is to actually learn more about AI and how to make good social media posts, because I've said it before, I am not a creative person. I am an analytical person, and I've had to learn how to be creative over the past 6 or 7 months. And
I think you did a good job.
It is exhausting. So I'm trying to just, I want to learn a little bit more so that I can not get so, not frustrated, but I get a lot of brain freezes, and I just can't, like, it's like a writer's block. Like, I'm used to writer's blocks because I'm a writer, but when it comes to doing design work, it's difficult. So I want to learn a little bit more so that that's something that I can branch out more for other folks too within the community, instead of just what I'm currently doing, because I enjoy it when I don't get frustrated, as I'm like, I have all these posts to do and don't know what to say. So that, and then bookkeeping will be a service I'm going to offer in the future. I just need to get into a good schedule with these boys, with all the other work, so I can make sure I can actually fit it in. But it's growing slowly but surely, and as they get older, I'm going to slowly add more work to my repertoire that I can do to help people out.
And why did you go that direction?
Which direction?
Like, going more, like, why did you find that that's the way you wanted to go with the social and all of that?
Because as much as I complain about being more analytical, I actually do enjoy somewhat trying to be creative and pulling it out. And when I come up with something on the fly and put it out there and it gets like 5,000 views on YouTube, I go, wow, I actually came up with something good that somehow hooked people to look at this video or whatever. So it's fun and it's rewarding. And like I said, when I was a paralegal, my job was to make my attorneys look good. I like the people that I work for, I want them to look good so that they can keep doing well and succeed, and not just me.
Awesome. Jake, you sound like you're about to start something new. Tell us about that and why you've decided to go that direction.
Oh, I'm starting like 3 new things. Actually, more like 5, but only like 3 of them are relevant. I have it bad. I'm Vaynerchuk would say, you know, entrepreneurs are the least focused people ever. The podcast is probably just going to be my vocal platform for me to talk at a microphone and yell at it. To generate more income in 2024, probably doing something along the lines of I identify local businesses that need customers and I build a package that gets them more customers. Whether that's I manage your website or you like your website, you know, do you have a website? Do you like your website? Either way. And then I just help with social and like events and things like that. Like part of it is when my friend who has a coffee shop locally, I asked the question a couple weeks ago. His biggest problem right now is customers. So I play in a local pub poker league, and I'm like, why can't we do coffee house poker, free poker leagues? So I'm starting that, and my biggest problem is finding people who want to help me build tables. Oddly enough, nobody wants to actually do things with their hands right now. But yeah, doing that, and then getting into some vending machines. I've got two friends on the opposite ends of the valley and the opposite ends of the political spectrum, but they both have physical establishments that vending machines would work great at. Just little micro hustles that stack together and compound. Like this one can feed into this one in a sort of a positive feedback loop.
Awesome. Ryan, what's next for Ryan and why?
Well, I think one of the big things I've been working on is putting out really high quality content. I actually use those in my designs for people because one of the things that I find is people really like having a visual and instructions on, if I recommend something. So I've been working on that and building my YouTube channel to be just a resource hub for people. And then I'm also doing teaching. So I'm going to be trying to do a lot more classes and on-site teaching and things so that people get hands-on type interaction and also get to meet their own community. So one of the things that I really loved in this last year that I did is I've had some classes where people from the community have come in to be a part of the class, and I think the teaching was great. But one of the biggest things they left with was a pocket full of phone numbers and names for all the people in their local community who they had never met, who are trying to do the same thing. So I think classes is a big one, and then high quality YouTube content for instructional stuff. Like I've got a partially done series on how to do mini swales in an orchard for people who are trying to do that themselves and may have questions as to the best way to do that.
Man, my mini swales have been great this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're so useful, and not being overly large because so many of the swales I see put in are way too big. So anyways, if people want to see that, that's at the Homestead Consultant on YouTube. I'm starting the series. Some of it's done. There's some yet to be done.
Awesome. And why did you decide to go that way? Is it just because you like it, or is it the community piece?
It's both. Yeah, I think I really want to continue to build community, continue to connect people. I think with some of the craziness I expect to happen financially and otherwise in the coming year or two, and even if you don't, living a good life, whether things are bad or good, making sure that people are connected is one of the biggest things for resilient homesteads, is that you have a resilient community behind you, and where one person may be lacking, another person is doing something. So the community part of it is pretty huge for me.
Awesome. Well, guys, I want to thank you for making time this week to jump on this roundtable discussion. It was really fun for me to hear from people like all of you from the network, because I know I see you online, but we've never done anything like this before. So this may be like the birth of a new thing we do every so often at LFTN, is just hear from folks from the network and what they're doing and where their life is going. So thanks for making time. And for those of you on the audio podcast, I'll drop links to these guys in the show notes, and we'll talk soon. Make it a great week.